Hello, maroonasrock.com. I'm here with Gilles, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing this, Poitras from Quebec, but also now the Bay Area. Oh, I was the Bay Area for the last, I don't know, how many years now?
77?
77. So,
In California since 55?
so basically, he's one of us either way, no matter where he is. This is one of the premier anime fans of the world who has actually turned it into one of the most successful series of books for fans. So I guess we should just start with the basics. How did you get into anime in the first place?
I started out as a movie buff. I'm old enough that you could watch classic movies on over the air, and every weekend in the afternoon you could watch Bogart films, Hitchcock films, sometimes even like European films with subtitles. And so me and my friends, by the time I got into high school, we started forming a group that would talk about films, and we'd pool our money, hop in a car, drive down to like Sacramento or the Bay Area and go see films in art houses. Well, many, many years later, I finished my undergraduate years in college. I moved to the Bay Area. I'm walking through Japantown. I go, oh yeah, cool, Japanese stuff, yeah. Wait a minute, there's a TV monitor. That's animation. But what they're doing in the animation was cinematic. They had angles, they had tilts, they had pans, they had depth of field focus shifts, all sorts of things, which I knew about from movies, but I had not seen in cartoons. So that got me excited. Many, many years later, after finishing graduate school and working for several years, I got a phone call saying that UC Berkeley had an anime club, started attending there, and became completely, thoroughly addicted. And then from then on, I became more active in fan circles, and my fan activities eventually turned into the creation of my first book, The Anime Companion.
Actually, I heard a story about the Anime Companion that it started off on an internet forum.
Yeah. It was actually in Usenet. I would post it on Rec Arts Anime and Rec Arts Manga, and it was simply an FAQ file of items commonly seen in anime and manga.
So how exactly did you accumulate so much knowledge about the Japanese culture and everything? Because I was looking, because I have a copy of my own, and I just found it fascinating, like, the things about the gourd that people drink from, like about how they have to remove their shoes, just the simple thing about how bathing customs for them is so different from Western things. I just want to know, how did you accumulate so much knowledge?
Well, this is, of course, I've been a librarian for several years at this point, so I wanted accurate secondary sources about Japanese culture. So what do you do if you're looking for good information on Japanese culture in the Bay Area? First, you get to good libraries. I discovered that the books on Japan were not down to that level of minutia. So then I had to start buying books. And where do you do that?
Japantown.
You go to Japantown, and you go to Kinokuniya, and they had the Kodansha 2-volume illustrated encyclopedia of Japan for like $250. So I grabbed that monster, and that was one of the first things I bought. And then there was a series of little tiny Japan Travel Bureau books, which are really small, but they're like $18-20 a piece. They are incredibly dense with information. So those became major sources. And then from then on to the present day, I keep my eye out for books that have information I don't know about, and therefore I add to a library to learn more about Japan.
Well, you've written like 3 books now: the Anime Companion, Anime Essentials, and the Anime Companion 2. And I gotta ask you, just because I'm sure this has come up, is there like 1 or 2 questions that you frequently get asked about that's Japanese in Japanese animation?
Not so much anymore, because a lot of the stuff that I used to get asked now is common knowledge in fandom. So fans can easily find out a lot of that information. So what I'm doing now, the Anime Companion has continued as a project. I've got about 750 new entries online in a web supplement. And the web supplement now has a detailed topical index to the whole thing, because it gets unwieldy. And I've gotten feedback from various librarians on how to improve it, so it's pretty well refined. And I try to regularly add a few more entries. So I've been doing more entries on yokai, on various other items. But I don't get questions the way I used to, because I've done enough material and the knowledge is out there enough now that those types of questions don't show up. So I just look for interesting, nifty things that fans don't seem to be aware of and post those.
So you've been into anime a very long time, and I think I ask, have you noticed any major differences in how both the genre and the fandom have changed from when you started to now?
Yeah. I started being kind of very active in around 89, 1990. And what happened then is the fandom was primarily male, primarily college-aged. So I was one of the alumni who was a member of the Anime Club of Berkeley. The other thing is most of the manga and anime that were coming out at that time were aimed mostly at college age. And a lot of manga was seinen manga. There was very little manga for kids. And same thing with the anime. You know, you find things like Bubblegum Crisis, you know, and Maddox and so forth. And that was what was happening then. In the mid-90s, we had a dramatic shift in demographics. Sailor Moon hit the air.
Yeah.
Teenage girls en masse discovered anime. They very quickly expanded their knowledge. Of course, this is also around the same time that the web was exploding. So they started connecting internationally, the ones that did have web access.
I believe at the same time Dragon Ball Z was doing its round. And
beginning to, yeah. And so the demographic shifted in age much younger, from college age to high school age, and many, many more females. Now, high school boys started discovering it too because the girls were excited, so they started looking at things and they started discovering manga.
See, kids, anime can help you meet girls.
Yes. If the girls are interested in anime, take a look at what they're interested in and see what you can find. The other thing that happened is the mothers of many girls started becoming fans because they started paying attention to it. They started coming with their daughters to conventions, and they started getting hooked. So that was another interesting demographic shift. So nowadays at anime cons, the majority of attendees and people active on staff are female, which is quite a shift from when I was starting out as a fan. And the other thing that's kind of interesting is those teens in the 90s, of course, are much older now. Many of them have their own children. And so you've got like kids being raised on anime as just part of normal entertainment.
So I just noticed that anime in general has a very unique place, not just in American pop culture, but global pop culture. I mean, we have the fanaticism that goes in Europe, like in France and Italy. We have the huge boom for giant robots and such in the Middle East.
Yes.
And it's just, what do you think it is about anime and Japanese pop culture that makes it so appealing around the world?
Part of it is multi-episode storytelling. An anime show is usually one story. American shows tend to be a single story. Now, most of the world has multi-episode storytelling as the norm, but a lot of the anime stuff, it's animation of a type that is not produced anywhere else in the world. Nobody else has the kind of industry that Japan has. It evolved in rather unique circumstances in Japan. Animation, most of the world tends to be every episode is a separate story, or just totally goofball stuff, like the old, Tom and Jerry and stuff before the 1970s. So it's a unique thing in that the complexity of stories, the diversity of stories, the quality ranging from garbage to extremely literary and extremely well-crafted. You've got an incredible range. It's a whole industry in its own right.
Okay, I gotta ask, just from one fan to another, if we have to ask, top 5 creative forces in the anime industry for you, like who are your top 5 favorites?
Companies, I would put Gainax and Ghibli up very high. Individuals, Go Nagai would be quite up there.
Nagai all the way down to the Middle East, really.
Yeah. He had a tremendous impact in Europe since the first anime TV series in Europe were Mazinger.
And I think it was also Grandizer, also caught on really big in France.
Yeah, France and Italy. But who else? There are many people I have high regard for, but I don't know if I could actually. Top 5 lists are almost impossible for me to do. I do more like top 50. Because some of Takahashi Rumiko's stuff I totally adore. Nozomi Koku is excellent. The Runic Tales short stories are quite good. For manga, there's been some incredible stuff that's come out. So it's really, really hard for me to do that. Koike for manga is a major figure, Kazuo Koike, because he's influenced so many other people, and he's mentored so many other people in the industry.
Of course, there's Tezuka as well. We can't ever disregard
Tezuka. And part of the fun with Tezuka was he was so obsessed with outdoing everybody else. He did such the genres and breakthroughs that other people were doing helped drive him to do even more, so which made it really cool. So it's really hard to say. Outside of Japan, Frederick Schott, who did the first book Manga on manga, is really good. His Dreamland Japan is good. He has a book on Astro Boy, which is excellent. He was, of course, Tezuka's personal translator whenever Tezuka came to America, and he's just a great guy. Helen McCarthy in England, who wrote the book on Miyazaki, and he co-authored with John Clements the Anime Encyclopedia, has been a major figure. So it's hard for me to do a top 5.
Oh, that's always a problem, though, when you get down to it, like, especially with so much quality. I think the funny thing is sometimes I wouldn't, just because I've been a fan for a very long time, like most of my life, a lot of times people ask me, how would you get into it? Like, how would you introduce somebody who's new to it? And I always find that a hard question to answer because it depends on what they're into. I turned a film buff into an anime fan through psychological thrills like Perfect Blue, and I just gotta say, if you had to say what would be great gateway anime, like to lead someone in, like what would you recommend?
I tend to go for things that would not be as extremely unusual for people compared to what they're normally used to. So I would start with maybe 1 or 2 of the Studio Ghibli titles, maybe something like Castle in the Sky or Porco Rosso, which are very approachable. And then maybe look at some of Kansutoshi's work. Tokyo Godfathers is just a delightful thing. If they're a fan of serious cinema, Millennium Actress. That's such a wonderful homage to Japanese cinema. Maybe just the first few episodes, or pick 3 or 4 different series and show just the first episode of those series.
I usually have this rule, like you could get them to the 4th episode to see if it's their thing.
If it's their thing, yeah. I have potlucks, and periodically what we do after we've watched what we've decided on to watch, we watch like the first episode of several things, which later on goes into another series we're going to do. So we're finishing up the Pat Labor second OVA series now. I'm about to do the movies. But I think what we're going to do is after we watch a movie, we'll start watching the episodes of Eden of the East.
I remember when I was in high school, I used to bring people over for New Year's, and we tried to do like an anime marathon overnight. Mm-hmm. Problem was the theme would always fall apart somewhere around Escaflowey.
Oh yeah. I once had somebody at a potluck say, we were deciding what to watch, and says, Nothing But Big Eyes. So I said, I got the perfect title. And I grabbed Dragon Half. He adored it. You know?